Welcome to the show. This is Head Trip number 5 with my special guest, my brother from the same mother, Garrison Tandy.
That's me. Thank you.
This is episode number 5, which means I've been doing it for over a month. If you had a guess at the over-under, how long do you think I'll keep this podcast going? You think it'll go 20 episodes?
Say 20 years.
20 years?
Yeah.
You think podcasts will even be around in 20 years?
Yeah, probably so, just in a different form.
20 years.
Maybe there'll be like holographs of you that have audio coming out of forearm or iPod gadgets.
Yeah, like a Princess Leia hologram that pops up out of like a John Elway forearm armband.
John Elway, yeah.
You know what quarterbacks wear?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking of, some kind of like sheath on your forearm.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe I'll just speak for an hour and then I think the change will be I definitely won't have to do all this like editing and like computer work. I'll just be able to speak into my phone or whatever that is, and then people will be able to hear it automatically.
Yeah, 20 years. I think it'll be 20 years.
20 years is a long time. I could be dead. I could be a woman.
You could be a woman.
I mean...
Then you'd have a different sort of podcast about your transition.
I don't plan on either of those things happening, but I'm just acknowledging that a lot can happen in 20 years.
No, that's true. How long do you think it'll last?
Well, when I started this show and we started the Me Gooks, we really did it in this 2-year time period. So as we were talking about earlier, our life was just sort of all over the place. We were in Bali, we were in Australia. Even when we first moved here, we were living in that tiny little office-tel. And then, so we've been traveling so much in and out of the country, and then all of a sudden we signed a 2-year lease in this apartment. So it was like the biggest chunk of time where we've just had certainty that, okay, we're here, this is what we're doing. And it seemed like a good time to start new habits. You know, I was thinking like, oh, cool, if I start jiu-jitsu now, and I do it for 2 years, I can be a blue belt.
Yeah.
And now that goal is fucked because I can't do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah.
But it was the same idea. If we start a podcast now and we stick to it, we could build it up for 2 years. After 2 years, I have no idea if we're going to stay here but move, if we're going to re-sign for a year, if we're going to move somewhere else. I have no idea. But my goal with my podcast is that I can show the transition of myself becoming a published author.
Yeah.
So I guess it's however long that takes. That's how long I'm going to do this show.
Yeah, well, it's a journey, so maybe 2 years is a good goal. We'll see. Maybe you'll be signing a new lease in 2 years and also signing some pages from a newly published book.
Yep.
At the same time.
It's good to visualize those things.
Yeah.
Because they don't just come true on their own. You got to
That's true.
make them happen.
Yeah.
If you ever started your own podcast, what do you think you would talk about on there?
That's a good question. I probably won't start one anytime soon, but if I did, I'd just talk about the things I like. I presume, maybe artists, musicians I like, or basketball, Portland Trailblazers, Korean-styled pizzas would be a good topic.
I think you got a good show forming here.
It'd be a good combo of things. I mean, it sounds like I think there might be at least 5 people across the world that like all 3 of those things.
Mm-hmm. They'd be your super fans.
And if they each supported me, I could make a living.
That's the amazing thing about the internet is you can actually find all the weirdos. Yeah. In theory, you can find all the weirdos who are just like you.
Yeah. Are you saying that's weird to like pizzas, basketball, and artists?
I think everybody's weird. I think everybody's uniqueness is weird.
That's true.
Like with April's YouTube channel, she's found a lot of mostly women, a lot of guys too, but more majority women who love design, who love clean bathrooms, who've experienced troubles with their diet and the way they eat. And so it's like her unique weirdness.
Yeah.
And then she finds people who relate to those things, and they, of course, love what she talks about because they, so it's like she finds, by putting herself out there, she built you. So that's what I hope both of our podcasts do that as well.
Yeah. I think you could, there's obviously a lot of people that are interested in writing and getting self-published, and just the stream of consciousness thought of people that are going through that process. I don't know what else I would talk about in my podcast. Maybe, so I guess I got musicians, pizza, basketball, maybe hiking, maybe just random thoughts for the day. Who knows?
Are you getting a little excited now? Are you thinking about it?
No, I don't think it'll happen this year.
You're not the kind of person who gets talked into ideas.
No.
You and April are the same in that you're the kind of person who, if you have an idea for yourself, you'll go all out. But you're not going to someone's not going to tell you hey, you should do this, and then you do it the next day.
It'll be a funny podcast where you're bullied into podcasting. It's like you don't want to be podcasting, but you have to.
Welcome to episode 1.
It's like you have a hostage that has to podcast, or else, I mean, that'd be really sadistic and cruel, but I think people would find it interesting.
Yeah, that's funny to think about. But people do that shit. People do things that they don't want to do.
Yeah.
Whether it's working a job they don't care about, or their spouse talks them into going to the barbecue on Sunday. They don't want to be there.
Yeah. I don't want to see Freddie and his wife. They're a bunch of assholes. I don't want to talk to them.
Yeah, people are always doing stuff that they don't want to do.
But probably not podcasting.
Yeah, it's funnier if it's like a weekly, like a project that you have to do. If it's like an artistic pursuit where you have to create something, if you had to make a new song every week, like write a new song on the guitar, but you just hated it, that's kind of funnier.
Yeah.
Because the artistic pursuit should be something that's beautiful that
exactly.
We think, we visualize it that way.
It's got to be something that you're enthusiastic about and that you want to talk about. So it seems absurd that you would do an art form where someone's making you do that. It wouldn't work.
Yeah, that's like forcing somebody to have fun.
Exactly.
Or forcing somebody to have sex or something.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't know, but no, I don't think podcast is in my immediate future, but I appreciate that what you guys are doing with both of your podcasts, and I think people besides you are excited about it, so it's very cool. And what is this? This is how many head trips have you done? You're up to 5 now?
This will be number 5.
Number 5.
My vision for it is because, as we've talked about this too, it gets lonely living overseas.
Yeah.
And, I miss my friends. And so I try to think about this show as if I was sitting around the fire with a couple of my best friends,
yeah,
what would we just naturally talk about? Because I miss out on those conversations because I'm the asshole who moved away. So, what would I talk about? So it's I don't know if cathartic is the right use, but it feels good for me to talk about these things. And then, friends or people who are interested in what I'm doing, they can hear what's on my mind.
Yeah.
But that's how I think about it. So that's why it feels natural for me and you to just talk about books or stories, because that's kind of what we talk about anyway, if we're
that's true.
Drinking or hiking or whatever it is.
Yeah. And we don't have a fireplace set in, but I'd say you got a good studio setting. We have a good view.
Yeah, we got a view of the city, which makes you contemplative, I guess.
I don't know if you want to let it be known that we tried an earlier podcast for this and it didn't work out so well.
We can let it be known. I'm embarrassed, but not. So last weekend or a few days ago, we sat down and we recorded this. Like, I thought it was good. It was like an hour of us talking, and what was funny is you ended up questioning me.
Yeah.
Even though I invited you to be on the show, you were asking me all these questions, and everybody likes talking about themselves, so I just started talking about my story. And then I was talking about I really gave a lot of details away about Tomorrow City and what I'm working on and my visions for my story.
Yeah.
And then I did not save the episode, and the whole thing went in the trash.
You know what?
The digital trash.
But the silver lining is it was still a fruitful conversation. We had a good time doing it.
Yeah.
It's funny to think about that there's a lost podcast out there. Like, where do podcasts go when they don't get published?
Where does anything go? I think there's something about me ever since I was a kid that I've always felt sad about that, the loss of time.
Yeah.
Which is I guess that's one of the normal existential crises, is like, when you sink into nihilism, you're feeling like, what does it all matter?
Yeah.
We're all gonna, in 50 years, in 70 years, we're all gonna be dead. All my friends are gonna be dead. In 500 years, everyone who's ever known me is gonna be dead. Everything I ever did or written, it'll all be for nothing. I don't sink into that nihilism all the way, and I think most people don't, or else they would just walk around like the worst version of that thought process was best laid out by Dostoevsky in Notes from the Underground, where the guy is so morally ambiguous that he just thinks, maybe I'll kill my neighbor because it just doesn't matter. Yeah. So that's like, if you really feel that way, that's why Dostoevsky was so important. Like, he played those thoughts all the way out to the end.
Yeah.
Most people have those thoughts, but then they don't really. Anyways,
yeah.
I've always felt sad I've always liked to capture things in pictures, and especially writing in my own journals, because that's really existentially important to me. That it is sad that beautiful memories and conversations and songs that I've written or interactions that I've had or thoughts that I've had, like the way that I felt and thought when I was 10, the way I felt and thought when I was 20, I don't want those to disappear.
Yeah.
And that is an egotistical thing. It's kind of like, I want to live forever. But that is, I think, a big motivation for why I ever wrote in the first place and why I still write.
Something that drives you, and it's true. Like, thinking back, I mean, there's some romanticism in that, like trying to capture a beautiful point in time and immortalize it. I mean, I can think of when we lived in Juneau, Alaska, and we were working. We had this zip line job, and it was really fun. We lived in a house with all our friends, and at night we'd get around and play guitar and sing songs, and you would record it, like just kind of a live not a performance, but just trying to capture that moment in time when we were all pretty happy to be alive and to be there, and we want to play these songs that we like, and it was really cool because now we can go back and listen to that and remember that time. Did you know that when, I don't know why this is coming to me, but when MLK died, Jimi Hendrix was he was touring around, and he's like on the East Coast, and when MLK died, he went back up to New York and played this show that people describe as like incredibly mournful and beautiful, and like just the most amazing he like did this improv.
Really in
Like-
the moment, like he
in-
expressed what everyone was feeling
Exactly.
about MLK's death.
Yeah, it's like he encaptured that feeling of the country. And
Yeah, that's like when Bob Dylan sang, what song did he sing in Woodstock, Blowing in the Wind?
oh yeah, that's true.
And kind of said what the nation was feeling,
Yeah,
but said it in a poetic way.
said it. Yeah, and it kind of captured what the nation was feeling. But I guess the difference in this experience is no one recorded that night that those like shows that he played in tribute to MLK. And so it's like it's famous in the fact that it was beautiful but never captured. And it's kind of cool in a way that, I mean, it makes it more famous in that fact that no one recorded it, and it just lives on through like the beauty and the sadness of that moment. But
Yeah, that makes it even more mythical in some way, because then the only way it can live is the way stories used to live for most of human history, which is by storytellers recounting what they saw and then passing that on to the next generation, and then each, the story has a tendency to evolve, and that's how you get myths over time, because nothing was ever written down.
Yeah.
And then you get stories like the Odyssey and.
But I think that is a good drive, good motor in you to want to document, whether it's a song or something you write. I mean, to live on through documentation of your life or something.
Yeah, that's always just resonated with me. And around that time you were talking about in Alaska, when I was recording those things, I had read The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test about Ken Kesey and the Further Bus and their psychedelic road trip across the country. And at that time they were, taking acid, but they also had all these insane like tape recorder things hooked up in the van.
That's right.
So they were constantly recording everything that happened. It was like the first documentary, like way ahead of its time.
Wow.
But I always thought that was amazing, and that really resonated with me. And that's, I think, the reason I loved Jack Kerouac so much, is because he always had a sort of sadness about him and a longing to remember everything, because he actually did write down all of the most important events of his life. He actually made into this his vision was what he called the vanity of Deleuze. So his vision was when he was old and happy and could die content, that he would have all of the whole legend of his life in different volumes of stories that he's written, and that one day his editor could go back and change all the names to the true names. And it could all stand as like the work of his life.
Wow. And that's why on the road he uses Dean as the name for...
Yeah, Neil Cassidy is Dean Moriarty. And the first awesome opening line is, he says, I first met Dean not long after my father died.
Yeah. Huh, I didn't know that about Kerouac. That's cool. I did watch that Magic Trip documentary, and what a thing to film! What a trip to film everything. I mean, they were just a group of young mid-20s vagabonds going across the country and singing songs and taking drugs and writing, and just like an artistic powerhouse.
Yeah, the first hippies, really.
Yeah,
or the best hippies.
Well, that's good. Some good self-realization to know that about yourself, and why you want to document, why you want to write. I guess it could be a egotistical thing, but it's something that you love nonetheless. I mean,
Yeah, I think every artist has to have some sort of ego to think, I can make this thing that's beautiful that other people should hear.
Yeah.
You got to feel like your thoughts are worth something.
Yeah.
Or else you would just never want to share them,
it doesn't have to be a memoir of your life. Like, you can create a beautiful fantasy novel, and it's still a record of something that came out of your mind and what you have worked towards. Doesn't necessarily have to be about Tolkien's going to be remembered for Lord of the Rings. Like, he's immortalized in that story. Or George Martin in the Game of Thrones.
Yeah, and that goes back to the immortality thing. Like, I made something. So the existential problem is I'm going to die.
Yeah.
But then the one solution or one pathological way that we try to avoid that death is to make things that live on longer than we do. Whether that's something we created or whether that's ideas. Some people, they want to create change in the world. So if I can become the mayor or the president or a social rights activist, I can change things for women or change things for the minority group, and then this will be a better world after I'm gone.
Yeah.
Those are maybe ego is definitely involved, but those can be good motivating factors for people to do good things.
Yeah.
Or the other obvious ones is, if I have kids, my name can live on. That's why, like, famous athletes or whatever, they name their kids their name.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I'm going to die, but my legacy can live on. My name can carry on.
You got little Bron with LeBron James.
Yeah, it's like a way of avoiding your own death, because you can't avoid your own death, but you can. Your influence can live on after you. And I always, whenever I create something, I get a hit of, like, happiness and fulfillment that I don't get anywhere else.
Yeah.
Even just finishing a podcast, especially finishing a piece of writing, it makes me feel good to know that will always be finished, or that will always exist, even if my grandkids don't give a fuck about it, because why would they?
Yeah.
Or they might try to upload my files on their computers and it won't even work because it'll be out of date. But I enjoy having things I've written or songs I recorded when I was young, just to have them.
Yeah, that's pretty incredible. I think your grandchildren might give 1 or 2 fucks about it. They might be intrigued.
Well, I hope so. Can always hope.
That's interesting, but it is different with social workers and people that enact social change. It's strange, like altruism, but ego at the same time. Like, they're going to be completely selfless in order to... I guess it just depends on their intention, their motivation for why they do what they do. And maybe it doesn't matter what that is. I mean, they make a beautiful change in the world. But with writers, that's a really cool thing to leave your mark on this world and to say, like, hey, there was a Jackson Tandy in 2019 that did this beautiful thing. And then when we're living on Mars with Elon Musk, we can look up on Google and remember that.
Yeah, it's funny how it's interesting to think about how famous novelists sort of capture a picture of their time period that they're living in. Yeah. Like when Jack Kerouac wrote On the Road, he didn't think it was going to be some culturally significant thing where we'd look back and we'd be like, whoa, that was so cool. And you could just drive your car up to a gas station in the middle of the night in Arkansas and just steal gas because there's nobody there. Yeah. And then, you had to run down to the drugstore to answer the telephone because nobody had cell phones. And you capture this cool point. Or like when you read Charles Dickens, you see what life was like in London at that time. They're just writing about their normal life, but then the older it gets, people go back and read those things. You get to just what their daily lives were like. Yeah. But so how's Feast of Crows treating you so far? This is the second time you've read them, right?
Yeah, I'm on my second trip through the Game of Thrones, the Song of Fire and Ice novels, and it's a fun thing to read. You know, I've been in Australia for the last 5 months or so. So when I got there, I was like, I think it's about time I took on a long series again.
Big project.
Yeah. It's almost a guilty pleasure in some respects. They're page turners. Every chapter something very exciting happens, or it's gory and interesting and surprising.
What's happening in Feast of Crows?
Right now, so I guess Arya just got over to Bravos, and she has knocked on the door, the house of the many-faced god, and she's about to get into that realm of becoming an assassin. And Jon just became Lord Commander of the Wall, the Night's Watch. Stannis Baratheon is over there with Melisandre, and
they're at the wall.
They're at the wall. They're really
with Jon.
With Jon, they're interjecting, and he wants Jon to be king of Winterfell, but Jon doesn't want that. And Stannis is trying to gather the wildlings as a force to take the north.
Stannis is such a hard ass. I love his character because he always stood for what he stood for.
Yeah.
And he was always honorable until it was his undoing.
Yeah.
And I thought one of the show did it really well when he died. I can't remember now exactly what he said, but it was the Battle of the Bastards.
Yeah.
Which doesn't happen in the books. There's no Battle of the Bastards.
They do have the battle at Winterfell, I believe, with the Boltons, right?
Oh, that's right. But Jon's not there.
Yeah, I don't think he's there.
Right.
I think it's just Stannis' army.
Yeah, Sansa's not there.
No.
Living with Ramsay Bolton, and Jon's not there leading the charge.
No.
It's not Jon versus Ramsay. Does Stannis die in the books?
I don't believe we get to that point in the books where he dies.
Well, the show did it so well where the battle was over and he was sort of like half alive. It was like the next morning and he was like in the snow in the forest alone. Yeah. Like couldn't stand up because he was so wounded. And then finally another soldier found him. And he was like, go ahead, do what you need to do. It's your duty or whatever. Like he just knew that his time had come.
He was a dutiful man. He was a fair man. And you see that in the fact that he chops off Sir Davos's fingers. I mean, like, Sir Davos helps him in a desperate situation, but he's going to judge fairly, not cruelly, but it's like you were a thief and a pirate, so you can help me, but I'm going to take something from you. It's like the world's supposed to have some kind of balance for Stannis, you know? Justice, yeah. He's a Libra. I think their symbol is scales, you know? There's some kind of balance of justice in the world that he needs to see through.
Stannis has got to be a Libra. But that's why I think that's like the real power of George R. R. Martin is how good his characters are. Yeah. And Stannis is one of the best examples of that to me because you know exactly who he is, you know what's important to him. And so then what George Martin does, which is so twisted and scary and horrible but also fascinating, is he follows that through. Like, what would that look like? Like if you had a girl, if you had Cersei, who was always jealous of her brothers and she thought she should be the king, but she's a woman and she's ruthless. Like, what would that look like if you played it out to the most extreme? And then you get this sort of unlovable, cruel character in Cersei. And then with Stannis, there's two things. There's his loyalty, and then there's he really believes strongly in his destiny. That I really am meant to be the king because I'm a Baratheon, I'm the older brother. And he really believes that that's his destiny. And what's so horrible about that is he really thinks it's his duty to do whatever he has to do. Yeah. And so George Martin takes that to the worst extreme, and then we finally see him allowing his daughter to get burned because he believes that no matter what the cost is, literally.
He has to see it through to achieve his throne as the chosen one.
So he'll literally do anything. And then that's his, like, coming to Jesus moment right before he dies is like, I tried everything. It wasn't actually meant to be. This is the end.
Yeah.
Put me out of my misery. He just accepts it.
It's a cool pairing of him with Lady Melisandre, the Red Priestess, because he's this honorable, dutiful Westerosi knight through and through, and then she's the sorceress that can use black magic and kind of a temptress in a way, and you see Stannis' weakness with her, because he's like, this is a tool I have. I'm going to use her to win back my throne, and I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'm going to have her use black magic, even though it's not necessarily fair and honorable. You see him like, I'll dip my toes in that just because I want this so bad. But I think those books are incredible. It's a very vivid world that he's created. Like, it's just you can read through the pages and feel like you're there, and it's pretty impressive.
That's the power of like the best in fantasy literature.
Yeah.
Whether it's Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, or when you really create a world like that people can just immerse themselves in, then they just have fun hanging out in that world. Yeah. It's that escapism. Yeah. And like, you really, if you like that author, that world, you could read endlessly in that world. What were the other... Sorry, did you have another point on that?
No. Go ahead.
What were the other like favorite series or the things that you read when you were young that like turned you into a reader?
Harry Potter definitely was like, it was what got me reading. I mean, I think even our parents would say that. Like, I think my dad got me Harry Potter for Christmas one year, and
man, he probably was always trying to turn us into readers, wasn't he?
Probably. I don't think he had to try as hard with you as he did with me, but
but he eventually found a way into your heart.
Oh, he's like, he'll like magic, and everybody loves Harry Potter. It's hard not to like it.
Yeah, but you were the golden generation who was like Harry Potter's age, right?
That's true. Yeah, kind of grow up with Harry Potter. So
yeah, you and your friends were like right at that time when the first one came out. You were Harry Potter's age. Yeah. And then by the time the last one was out, you were grown up.
It's true. It was probably beginning of college or something. And no, if you want to get someone to read, that's like a good gateway book into the, I mean, it definitely struck me. And that was the first book that I would stay up all night reading, like there's some books maybe you put your health and rest aside for the sake of a story. It really captures you.
April's not a big fantasy reader, but she tore through all of those.
Yeah, it's that was the first one I loved, and after that, I would say Golden Compass was mind-blowing. I like Golden Compass even more than Harry Potter, because as good as Harry Potter is, it doesn't have these it does have some deep philosophical meanings to it that you can read into it, but I think it's more fun and adventure than it is. It doesn't deal with like morality and ethics, and Golden Compass was just, it had everything for me. It had the adventure, and then it had maybe a dark side and philosophy, religion. It was mind-blowing.
Yeah, you as like a sort of philosophy nerd or philosophy buff, I can see how Golden Compass, the whole concept of dust and the religion is a huge, I mean, she's in Oxford. Well, it's not really Oxford, but it's basically Oxford, right?
Yeah.
It's like an alternate world.
Alternate
that might as well be Oxford.
Yeah.
The sort of global battle that's happening is the secular world versus the religious world.
Exactly. It's put on a celestial scale, I guess, this battle between the two. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the church in that story seems somewhat oppressive. It's kind of taken to the extreme in some sense.
Yeah, I think churches have banned those books, right? Or
yeah, they don't. No, I would recommend those to any those. I think you enjoyed those too, right? They were incredible.
Yeah, I loved them, and I'm still excited to read the Book of Dust, but you were a little let down by it, huh?
Yeah, I guess it's set. It's a prequel to the Golden Compass series, and the main character Malcolm was interesting, but I mean, I want to read about Lyra still and Lord Azriel.
Azriel. How do you say it?
I was gonna say Aslan, but I was like, that's
I don't know how
the
you
lion.
pronounce it.
No, it's Lyra and Will and Azriel, and Mrs. Coulter is the evil woman.
Well, we can watch the TV show when it comes out this year.
It'd be incredible. And I guess when you're researching to write your story, you're looking at all these famous trilogies, right, and seeing like how did they build their world, and
I really nerd out on that stuff.
Yeah.
Since I started this whole writing project 5 years ago, I really enjoy going back and reading series that I love. A lot of times I'll just read the beginning because usually what I'm trying to do is start a new story. And so I'm just trying to figure out what's a good way to jump into this world. And I think it was the episode before this, I talked a lot about the Game of Thrones, the first scene where they find the 5 direwolves, or 6, or however many it is. And then the first scene with Daenerys, the queen, the first time you see her.
Yeah.
How George Martin starts and ends that scene. It's fucking brilliant. I won't recount it all because I just talked about it last time. But I haven't gone back through and done a study of Golden Compass. But I did go back and read like the first, I read the first 100 pages or whatever. And I love the way that book starts out is that what you have is Lyra and her daemon, what's his name, Pentamillion?
Yeah, Pentamillion. I don't know how you actually pronounce it, but
I always want to just say pantaloons.
Pantaloons.
Or plantains.
Yeah, you can do whatever you like.
Lyra is sneaking through the hall. She's like in this Oxford study, and she knows that the master is going to be there and he's having this important meeting. But what she's really excited about is her uncle. She thinks it's her uncle, Lord Azriel, is going to be there because he's been traveling in the north and now he's come back. Yeah. So she's sneaking through, and so you're immediately put in this really fun sort of collegiate, high-level university sort of snobbish, but also prestigious environment where there's pictures of the masters on the walls and there's leather chairs and whiskey and goblets, and you get that feel of this high society, scholarly, I think that's what I was looking for, this really scholarly environment. So Lyra's this little girl and she's sneaking around there, and then all of a sudden the master's come into the room, so she has to hide in a cabinet. Yeah. And the whole time her demon is telling her, like, let's get out of here, this is too dangerous. And she's like, no, we'll just listen. Yeah. And then what happens, and I think that's so cool because Lyra, the best thing about Lyra is she's like a chronic liar. Yeah. She's really good at lying. And I think that's even built into her name. Yeah. And
her imagination, making up stories to lie.
That's like one of her best characteristics. So I think it's really unique, and one reason she's such a lovable character because she's good, but she also has this funny trait, which is she's a great liar. Yeah. And there's that scene in maybe the third book where there's that big she's with the giant bears.
That's right. Yeah.
And she comes before the bear king, and it's like everything's on the line, and then she tells him this big elaborate bullshit story that she just makes up, and she saves the day.
Gets her off the hook, yeah.
But anyway, so the first time we see her, she's somewhere where she shouldn't be. Yeah. And then she hides in the cabinet, and then she sees through the peephole that they're going to poison. The butler comes in and like drops some poison in Lord Azriel's glass. And then Lord Asriel comes in and he hears her and she jumps out and he's like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
But stay in there and watch for more trouble.
Yeah.
So then they're like in cahoots. So it's like the uncle and the niece, they're like troublemakers together.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, it's a great introduction to that world and also to her character, to find the first time we see her, she's sneaking around somewhere that she shouldn't be.
You're right. I mean, I think it's really cool to see that setting, that scholarly place with all these prestigious teachers, and you're seeing it through the viewpoint of this like rambunctious troublemaker child who's just running around like in the cellars, jumping on the roof. She like drinks a bottle of wine and gets drunk in the cellar, and she's messing with the skeletons and hiding in cabinets. There's multiple things. I mean, as he's introducing you to Lyra and that character and showing her good nature / like troublemaker side, you sense that there's something bigger going on in that world, and she sees it through the cabinet. So it's a brilliant way to start the story. It creates mystery because she doesn't understand why someone would poison her uncle, and she's wondering where he's been in the north, what he's been doing. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't really know her mother or father, and it's an amazing way to start a story.
All the best stories just hook you right in with those mysteries, and you suddenly want to know so much about the world, and that's why you keep reading.
Yeah, it's tough to introduce that mystery, maybe subtly, and do character development at the same time.
Yeah. So that's why it's such an artwork.
Yeah.
It's not something you can just tell somebody like how to make a table or cook spaghetti. It's like, do this and this and this. Although of course, there's artwork involved in those crafts too, with people who are best at them. But the creative process is so. I like to think about that stuff. You have so many options. Like if I had this whole world of the Golden Compass in my head, and then I was like, all right, Lyra is going to be my character. I'm stoked about this. And then I would think, well, what's the first scene? How are we going to first see Lyra? So you might be tempted to write, maybe the first time you see her is when she gets the Golden Compass.
Yeah.
Because that's what the story's about, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe the first time you see her, is when she meets Miss Coulter. Yeah. Or maybe it would be fun, the very first scene, if she's running on the rooftops and drinking wine.
Yeah.
But then if you're a really master author, you tie all those things together and you get this scene where Lyra is really more of an observer, but you learn all about the world. You get a feel for the world, and you learn mostly about her character. Like, this is the kind of girl she is, kind of sneaking around where there's serious stuff going on, but she's a kid, so she doesn't realize how serious it is.
Yeah.
And then you get a hint at the global picture too. It's just brilliant. That's why I love going back and reading, just to appreciate what those authors have done.
Yeah. Because
the problem when you try to write a story is you have death by too many options.
Try to do too many things at once, maybe. I mean,
or you get
overwhelmed.
Yeah, I try to carry 100 different scenarios of what would be the best way to write Lyra, and then you just get scared and don't write anything.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what the best way to do it is. And that's why I have to force myself, the stories that I have actually managed to finish, is I force myself to write that and write it, even though it might not be the best.
Yeah.
And to write something so that later I can come back and change it and the editor can help me make it better.
That makes sense.
But when I get paralyzed into writing nothing, that's the failure of it,
Yeah.
The victory is just doing it, making any choice.
Yeah.
Just saying, okay, I'm going to write this character, and then playing it out to the end. And maybe at the end you have a bad story, but at least you have something you can learn from or change until it's better.
That's a good point.
Well, my hope is that I will be able to write the story I'm working on and that you'll be able to read it later this year. Yeah. And now you know some of my secrets. We talked about it. You kind of know what it's about. And so...
Yeah, I would love to see that. I mean, it's exciting to think about and then to listen every week about the process. I mean, not everybody gets to hang out with the writer while they're while they're going along. I definitely think one of your characters should be a delivery man that rides around on one of those motorbikes in the city.
Yeah.
Those guys are insane. They don't follow traffic rules, and they're everywhere. They get into apartment buildings and businesses.
Yeah, it's almost like the perfect spy cover.
Yeah, that's true.
Because you could just pretend like you're a delivery man and get into any apartment.
Yeah. Yeah.
You could be taking dangerous goods from one place to another.
Be colluding with the delivery service to keep eyes out.
Yeah, they can be delivering messages. They can be hitmen.
Yeah.
And do all kinds of things. And they wear helmets, so it's like they could be disguised too.
That's true.
Yeah, I should work that in there.
I don't know. I feel like I might get hit by one before I leave here. They drive around pretty recklessly, but they're everywhere.
Yeah, they're nuts, man. You're not safe when you're on the sidewalks. Hey, thanks for doing this, dude.
Yeah.
I hope we can do it again someday.
My pleasure, and that would be awesome if we did. We'll have to play it by ear.
Well, if I'm podcasting for 20 years, like you predicted, then we'll have another chance.
Surely there'll be another chance. Maybe in Korea for my third visit, or maybe when you're back in Portland. But that would be cool.
Thanks for doing this, man. I like talking books and stories with you.
Yeah.
And hearing what you're thinking.
I enjoyed it. And look forward to listening to more. Thanks for having me on, dude.